The woman in your life will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily.
Hello everybody and welcome to Women's Spaces. My name is Elaine Holtz and I'm your host. And as always, I am so excited about today's show. I have a very special guest with me by the name of Julie Combs. And what we're going to talk about, we're going to have a very lively discussion on something that's coming up in Santa Rosa on the November ballot, which is an opportunity for the citizens to vote on whether or not they want district elections. And I just thought it would just be a really good idea to start talking about it and start thinking about it. And that's why I invited Julie. And I just want to give you a little bit of a background. I had no idea that there was even anything in the works about district elections. I was invited to a meeting, and then I ended up finding out that there's a group that's trying to get district elections on the ballot. And I found that to be very exciting because I think in our democratic process, the most important thing that can happen for us is that citizens become involved. And I saw this as an opportunity to get involved. And every 10 years, they have a group called the Charter Review Committee that meets. And I mean, imagine a whole decade goes by before this group meets and decisions can be made. And what I found out in the process of learning about district elections and learning about their value, I found out that this is something that's been in the works, or at least people have been trying to get to happen for almost 20 years, which was very, very interesting to me. And the other thing that was really fascinating was the first leg of going to the Charter Review Committee was just to get them to make a recommendation to the city council to even put it on the ballot. And I was shocked at the struggle and that the input that this committee had to have before they would even consider it. Well, what was really interesting when I first found out about it, I found out that the Charter Review Committee had made a straw vote, and the straw vote was 18 against and 3 for. And I said to myself, wow, this is really interesting. Why is there a committee that would vote against putting something on the ballot? You know, I mean, that's what we live. We live in a democracy, and we should be able to vote. Voting is very, very important. That's what makes us the difference between us and, say, a country that's under the guise of a dictator. So I was kind of thrown off by that. They're having a hard time getting it on the ballot. So I decided to participate. And the first meeting I went to, I saw our community, Santa Rosa, in action. Why do I say I saw the community in action? Because I saw 150 people come out and express themselves in such a way that I was proud to be a Santa Rosan. I mean, it touched me in such a deep, deep way that I walked away thinking to myself, this is democracy in action. And so we went through the whole process. We ended up changing the vote. 9 against and 10 for, which got it on the ballot, and that's where we are now. And so the next step here, the next phase is that we have to get people educated. And I believe in my heart of hearts that Julie Combs is one of the best people to speak on this issue. I mean, she's been involved with it for a long time, and she really gives you a clear picture of what it is and why it's important. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, Julie Combs. Julie, welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm equally excited to be here. This is a great topic, and I really appreciate you helping get the word out about district elections.
Oh, I just think it's something that we really, really have to know about. But you know, before we get into our conversation about the district elections, let me just tell my viewers a little bit about you. I know you're a resident of Sonoma County for a little over 6 years. You also have a background in engineering. I understand mechanical engineering.
That's right.
That takes a good brain to kind of accomplish that. And I also know that you're a mother. And so I'd like to start the program out by just any other things that you would like to add to the conversation. Just tell us a little bit about Julie Combs.
Well, I have 2 children, and I live in Southeast Santa Rosa. And I'm on the Santa Rosa Community Advisory Board, which is a board that is appointed by city council members. And in the course of working in South Santa Rosa on the Community Advisory Board, I really noticed that there was a difference in the quality of services, in the awareness of how to access government in different parts of our city. And that's what started me wondering about the need for district elections in Santa Rosa.
So Julie, what you're saying is by being on this board, it's the Community Advisory Board, they call it the CAB, which is supposed to be an advisory board to the City Council. You began to see that there was kind of a little bit of inequality in the community, and you began to think a little bit about district elections. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly right. The CAB encourages or creates a method for citizens to better access government. And as a CAB representative, I was regularly in the Kiwanis Springs and Roseland area providing information services predominantly as a volunteer, just trying to help folks get their streetlights turned back on if the streetlight had been turned off or was broken. Asking questions about safe routes to school, how to get the street crossings to be improved so that they would be less hazardous for the kids on their way to school. Just real basic things. And I found that there were a lot of folks who had really no idea how representation in Santa Rosa worked. They didn't understand it. They didn't know who their city council members were. Many of them knew their supervisor better than their city council rep.
Well, don't you think that they knew their supervisors because with the supervisorial race, I know we're already divided into districts. In fact, my district is with Mike McGuire. I believe it's the 4th district. Aren't they pretty much districts?
Yes, Sonoma County has 5 districts, and they have 5 representatives, 1 in each district. And it's the way our government has been working for some time. The SRJC has its Board of Trustees appointed by region, by district. Our state government is by district. Our federal government is by district.
Can you explain what kind of system, if we're not by district, what kind of system do we have right now?
Well, right now we have what's called an at-large district, and it's pretty common for small cities and towns where there aren't a whole lot of people to have an at-large election. But as our town has gotten bigger, we have like 167,000 people now in Santa Rosa. As it gets bigger, it becomes too many people to have at-large elections. And that's the situation we're in now. People who live in certain areas vote is not being heard. It's diluted by people's votes from other parts of town.
Well, that's really interesting. You know, I noticed that. You know, I had an issue way back when. I don't know if you remember where they had the little issue at the Martin Luther King Park.
Yes.
And I found myself going to the city council meetings, and I suddenly became so aware that I really did not know any of the council members. I mean, I didn't have the same relationship with any of them that I had, say, with Mike McGuire. So I think that is what you are talking about.
Yes, in fact, our supervisorial districts have smaller populations than our city at large. So a city council member has to contact all of the voters in a very large area, whereas a supervisor only has to contact far fewer voters because they're in districts. And they get to know the voters in their districts much better than our city council members do.
Well, also, what about cost? I mean, how that must be a big difference in running in a district versus running for the whole city. I mean, what is your thought on that?
Well, certainly for the candidate, it will cost considerably less. And I think it will be one of the ways we can get big money out of our city government. We can have, right now it costs roughly $15,000 to send one mail postage flyer to everybody who votes in Santa Rosa, $15,000 for everybody. Where if you divide by 7, you're talking about well under $2,000. So it means that you don't have to have wealthy friends in order to run for city council. And you could walk neighborhoods, knock on doors, really, because you live in the area, know what the problems are in the place that you live, know where the serious potholes are. Really more truly represent the people in your area if we have districts. And another thing, is that it's cheaper for the city to hold district elections. So in these hard economic times, it also makes sense because it costs less for the city to run district elections.
Well, you know, what I'm hearing you say is that there's a little bit of an imbalance as far as representation goes. Would you say that's true because the way we have the system now?
Oh, absolutely. We have a significant imbalance, and I brought in a map if you'd like to show it. We have a map here that was made for the Charter Review Committee to consider, and it shows basically 5 areas in Santa Rosa. These are areas that are currently used by the Community Advisory Board. And if you notice, there's a large greenish, light greenish area.
Right here?
Okay, that's the dark green area. And you'll notice that there aren't any little dots in the dark green area above, say, College Avenue, Guerneville Road, or Piner Road going north along there. There's just no little dots. That's an area where there's not been a city council member in 12 years.
Now, what area is that here?
That's northwest Santa Rosa.
What's an identifier in that area? Do you know? Something that people can identify as something that's there.
Coddingtown.
Oh, right. This is my area then.
That's your area.
Oh, my goodness.
That's Coddingtown. That's the West End neighborhood where the Bodine asphalt plant is. That's a large section north of Highway 12 and west of Highway 101.
Well, how about this pink area? What area is that?
That pink area is southwest Santa Rosa, south of Highway 12, west of 101. It includes Roseland. And
I don't see any dots there either.
In the last 12 years, there's never been someone from that area. It's very rare to have someone from that area represented at all.
Now, what is about the yellow here?
The yellow, the sort of yellowy green one in the upper right hand is that's the northeast Santa Rosa. So that would be Fountain Grove and the McDonald neighborhood. Some of the more wealthy areas. We have had years where all the council members, all 7 council members came from that one region. And as you can see,
you see the dots there.
It's full of dots. And the blue area is the area where I currently live. There have been a couple of people from there. That includes Oakmont, Bennett Valley. But if you go west a little bit, you'll see that the Kiwanis Springs area, the area south of the fairgrounds, again, no representation.
So you're saying this area right here has the biggest bulk of representation?
A little further north of where you're pointing, yeah.
And
that
you're
green
saying,
area.
Right, and you're saying that area...
That light green area.
That area is a little bit more, say, for example, a little bit, how can we say it? There's a little bit more money and influence there.
There's money and influence in that area, that's right. There's wealthy friends there.
So then what I'm hearing you say is that what district elections mean is that there'll be more equality. There'll be more of a balance of those, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but I will, the haves and the have-nots. And sometimes the have-nots, live in little lesser neighborhoods and they don't have as much representation. And so I'm not saying this happened, but let's say we need a road there, and if there's nobody represented, they may give the road in another area where there's more representation.
Right, and it's interesting to note that the bus stops with shelters occur most frequently in the northeast part of town. If you ride the bus in the northwest part of town, you don't get as many bus stops with benches and shelters. So it's very simple things. People don't realize how deeply that divide goes. If you think about where the hospitals are, there aren't any hospitals west of Highway 101. So if there's a true emergency, those people have to have a longer response time just to get to the emergency room.
So you believe that having the district elections, there'll be more equal representation, hopefully.
Yes.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. And the California Voters' Rights Act changed recently and said, we really want to see more district elections. And they made district elections what's called a safe harbor. A city that has district elections can't be sued under the California Voter Rights Act. And there have been a lot of lawsuits recently since this changed for cities that didn't have district elections. So even if you don't buy the social justice concept, you should really think about whether we want Santa Rosa to have the problems that the city of Modesto had. Modesto was sued under the Voter Rights Act and had to pay $3 million and implement district elections.
Oh, that's a lot to chew on. Let me tell you something.
That's a lot of money.
You know, I hate to play the devil's advocate, but I'm going to.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm really swayed towards having district elections because I see it as a very democratic process, and we need equal representation. I mean, right now everything feels so out of balance, even in our own cities. Our own county. The county doesn't feel as out of balance as the city does. I mean, to me, it's kind of interesting. But what some people are saying, I mean, I hear little buzzes here and there, and what some people are saying is that if we have district elections, and I imagine there's talk about having 7 districts,
yes,
that these people are not going to get along. That, one district is going to want what they want, and another district is going to want what they want, so nothing's going to get done. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, we occasionally hear the argument that it will Balkanize the city, like that will become like the Balkans. We have already a very divided city council, even with the majority of them coming from the same region. And experience has shown us, for example, in San Jose, which recently converted to district elections, that they had a more vital downtown, that the district representatives worked closely together to ensure that the city got along and got what it needed. I think that it's a spurious argument. I don't think it holds water. Just as the county commissioners get along better as a group than the city council does in Santa Rosa, the districts, I think, will get along better than the current council does.
Well, it's also, I think, too, when you know that you have your district behind you. I know, for example, with Mike McGuire, who is my district supervisor, it seems like when you want to get something done, you have a little bit more clout because your district's kind of behind you, so you're not maybe you may not be as nervous to speak out because you know that you can go to the people in the district and say, this is what I'm trying to do, and get more support. So it seems like not only democratic, but it also seems like it gives people an opportunity to not only meet their the representatives from the city council, but also to talk to them and to voice their opinion. I mean, to me, it's just a win-win all the way around.
And we see increases in voter registration. Right now, less than half of our people are registered to vote who could vote, and we see increases in voter registration when district elections happen, because it benefits the person who lives who's running in the district to make sure their people are all registered, and they feel more involved in their government. So they want to register. They really feel like their voice will make a difference.
Well, also there's a personal aspect of it. I mean, I remember when I first went to the meeting, I was given the task of talking about the personal aspect of it, and the reason it was so personal to me was because Mike McGuire knocked on my door.
Right.
When Deborah Fudge was running, she knocked on my door. And so I got to meet the people, and I got to actually ask them, what are they going to do? There were certain issues that were, for me, I wanted to know what their stand was, and it was very, very, very interesting. So I really support the concept. I think the whole idea of district elections and having a little bit equal representation is really, I think, is so important, particularly in today's world, more than ever when you start thinking about it. Well, I'm sure my viewers are very curious, is that when you talk about districts, what would the districts look like? How many are there? 25? 1? I mean, what do you have to say about that?
Well, right now, we have been advocating what's called the Simple 7. There are 7 council members now. We anticipate 7 districts. And while the ballot measure will say that the council determines the districts, they'll determine how the district, what the process is. They won't draw the actual lines. It typically, just like the Board of Supervisors, the lines will be drawn by the Registrar of Voter using a computer program that takes into account all of the state regulations, like that similar topography should be together, communities of interest should be together. You can't have a piece of a district way over on one side and another piece of it way over at another place. It all has to be contiguous or lined up together. So there are a lot of rules, and they have to be relatively equal size. So it's unlikely that the districts will be like pieces of a pie, with wedges. It's likely that they will be in some other form, but that form won't exactly be determined until the Registrar of Voters for the county goes through the computer system and gives some choices for what the line should be.
So what you're saying is really not a political decision when they divide it. It's strictly numbers. It's strictly looking at how many people and how much representation. Well, that is really,
We want to keep it from being a political.
Pardon?
We do want to keep it from being a political decision.
I know, it's that,
Right.
and I think that's what ends up happening. It ends up happening that all these decisions are made. It gets so complicated because, and it's really simple. And this seems to be a pretty simple process. Well, I know it's going on the ballot.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was very recently decided. The Charter Review recommended it. Thank you to all the people who came out and spoke, yourself included. And then the City Council also had a series of meetings, and a lot of people turned up for some of those. And they recently voted to put it on the ballot. And they accepted without change the City Attorney's recommendations for the language for it to go on the ballot.
Well, you know, before we read I want to read the language
Oh,
because I
wonderful.
happen to have a copy of it and ask you what you think about it. But before we go into that, I want it made very clear to my viewers that this is on the ballot because the community came out and spoke. And that's what's so exciting about it. And when you think that the people came out with such passion because they felt that they did their own research. I know the North Bay Organizing Project was there and many, many other groups, that they came out and said, this is fair, this is the right thing to do, this is the democratic thing to do. So it's not like some political agenda, it's a people's voice that made this happen. So congratulations to all the people out there that were involved. Well, I'm going to read you the language, and the language is very simple, folks. It really is, and I'm really proud of Carolyn Fowler, our city attorney. She's just a wonderful person to work with, and one of the things I feel about her is that she really tries to, she likes fairness as well as staying within the guidelines of the law. So thank you, Carolyn. We just want to do a shout out for you.
Right.
Okay, here is going to be it's called, I have in front of me, it's called a ballot summary, and it says district elections. Shall the Santa Rosa City Charter be amended to change the manner in which city council members are elected from at-large election? Remember, that's how Julie explained. At-large means the whole city. To each council member being elected by and from districts created by the council. That means they're looking at the possibility of 7 districts, and each district will be represented. What do you think of that language, Julie? What's your thought on that?
I am so delighted that that's going to be on the ballot. I think it's great. There will be some details to be ironed out following the election, and that's fine. We've really looked closely at it. There aren't any hidden poison pills. It's just great basic language, and we're really grateful to Carolyn Fowler, the city attorney, for doing such a good job finding the right neutral language for something that could be a difficult hot topic.
Oh, I know. She just did a great job.
She did a great job.
Well, you know, there's a lot to think about, and I want to encourage my viewers that in November it's going to be on the ballot. There'll be a lot of information coming around. I'm going to do another program on this in September. We're going to bring some other people other than Julie to talk about it. So just keep your eyes and ears open to hear about information, about town hall meetings, about all the different things around this particular issue. And I personally, you know, I can't help myself. This is a democratic process. And that's what I hope to live the rest of my life, in a democracy. And democracy has equal representation, or at least get as close to equal as we can. Right now we're a little bit out of balance, and I see this as a way to balance things. But before we end the show, you know, I mean, I cannot let this one go. I know Julie is running for city council here in Santa Rosa, so I'd just like to talk a little bit about that too, Julie. Julie, tell us a little bit. I mean, I'm just so excited for you that you're running. Tell us how your campaign's going.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for mentioning it. I am running for city council. I'm very excited. My campaign will not be affected by this. This is for future candidates, so I'm running in an at-large election, and it's going really well. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Well, you know, I just want my viewers to know that you came in and said you didn't want to talk about the fact that but you're running for city council, but I don't think we can avoid that.
Thank you so much.
Well, you know, we're coming to the end of the program, and time goes by in the studio when you're having so much fun. And you know what I like to do is give my guests just an opportunity, 30 seconds, to talk to our viewers. You know, it is Women's Spaces. You know, anything that you feel that you'd like to say, please be my guest.
Oh, thank you, Elaine. I really appreciate it. I know that you have special viewers that are particularly interested and attuned to what's going on in Santa Rosa, and I believe that your viewers are the kind of people who we can count on to go out and vote in favor of district elections. What I would ask of your viewers is that you take someone with you, that you make sure the neighbors on both sides of you are registered to vote, and that they get out and vote, because getting out the vote will be the most important thing in November. So thank you.
Well, Julie, I couldn't have said it any better. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on Women's Spaces.
Thank you for having Women's Spaces, Elaine.
Oh, thank you. And wishing you much, much success. And thank you for all the work that you're doing for our community on district elections and some of the other things. I must say you are definitely a mentor to me.
Oh, thank you.
Anyway, to my viewers, what a great conversation. I mean, when you start thinking about it, there are so many wonderful community. And there's some other women running also, so I would encourage you, watch your mail, watch the newspaper, watch Women's Spaces. You'll see lots of interesting candidates. In fact, on Women's Spaces at www.women's.com, I have a special section dedicated to all the people that are running for office that have been on Women's Spaces, including Julie, including Carolyn Bonsuelos. I just did Erin Carlson, and there's just so many women that are running for office, and my hat is off to them. I mean, we need more women in politics. You know, we only have 17% representation right now, and we need a lot more. I mean, I think women bring a whole different idea to the table. We just think a little bit differently. I guess it's because we're women. Anyway, as I do at the end of the show, I try to get women voters, viewers particularly, to get off their duff and do something. Do something for peace, do something for the children. And at the very least you can do is get out and vote. You know, oftentimes people say to me, oh no, my vote doesn't count. My vote doesn't count. And I say, no, your vote does not count if you don't vote. But if you do vote, it does count. So I encourage you all to get out in November, get out to the polls, and make sure that you vote. And also what I try to do at the end of the show is to get my women viewers particularly to start writing letters. Write a letter to the editor, you know, write a letter to the President of the United States, write a letter to your local people, and make one simple suggestion. And that is, before our representatives make any decision, before they write those important bills, before they make those important votes, they ask one simple question, and that is it good for the children? Now, that is a very simple thing to ask. And why do I say that? Because if it's not good for the children, folks, it's not good for the future. You know, and war is not good for the children. Not having health care is not good for the children. Our education system, I mean, you know, one of the things that I have noticed about local elections, local people make local decisions. You have got to pay attention to who's running, and you must get out and vote. Like I said, if you don't vote, your vote doesn't count. And if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. You know, that's another thing. I always ask my friends when they're complaining about things, well, did you vote? And if they say no, I go, I don't want to hear you. You didn't vote, so you have no right to complain. Anyway, lots to think about, but that's the whole purpose of Women's Spaces, is get us all thinking. Anyway, this is Elaine Holtz with Women's Spaces saying thank you so much for watching, and I will see you the next time.
In your life, we'll do what you must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the